Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some PathOfExile 2 discussion. But today we're going to also be talking about PathOfExile 1 as well. The reason for that is that some of the information today is going to affect both games. That is the account changes that are going to be happening for PathOfExile 1. PathOfExile 1 has a complicated account system where people can start an account on Steam, they can start it direct with Granny Games, or they can start it on one of the console realms. With PathOfExile 2 aiming for a crossplay environment, this means that all of these complex knots that exist have to be unraveled, and that's going to be the major patch that's coming up. In fact, this patch not being ready is the reason that we had the 3-week delay. The reason that we had slippage from the 15th of November to the 6th of December is all because of the work that needed to go into this patch. All behind the scenes stuff. We'll get to more on that in a sec, but let's start with some of the minor POE2 news first, which we can get through pretty quickly because it's small stuff. Yesterday, Granny Games brought out a couple more of these little lore fragments. These are really cool. They're not something I want to deep dive into in this video because I think it's a modest section of the player base that are really interested into lore deep dives. So if you want to hear about the Stone Sentinels lore, the Quadrillas lore, the Carver Brutes lore, or the Azikul Shaman's lore, and I really hope I'm pronouncing her name right because she looks like she's not going to be someone that will be very happy if I don't, then you can have a look at these over on the PathOfExile 1 official website. I don't know why they're not on the PathOfExile 2 site yet, but they're not. PathOfExile 1 site, you'll be able to find these and read them yourself if you're in that section of the player base that are keen to find out more about the lore of individual monsters. The second piece of information that's PathOfExile 2 exclusive is the teaser for Kitoko's Current. This is a set of jeweled gloves, which appear to be a pure energy shield base for early in the game. Now, we don't know the entire context of these items, but there's one thing that's really interesting here. They demonstrate that there are going to be new alternate ailments, or perhaps something else that's not an alternate ailment, but is vaguely similar, and that is the concept of lightning damage inflicting Electrocute. There's not going to be an inherent feature of lightning damage. You're going to need to have a source of Electrocute somewhere. Kitoko's Current is one of them, and I think that these gloves are going to live or die based upon the power of that line of text. Lightning damage from hits also contributes to Electrocute build-up, because otherwise they don't look very strong. Even though we lack the context of just how good a certain amount of energy shield is in POE2, the fact that it's got reduced attack and cast speed sounds like it's a fairly significant drawback, especially because 12% in PathOfExile 1 is a big enough number that it would be a severe drawback there, and there's only really that one line that looks like it's something you can't get anywhere else. We will see how these turn out in-game once we understand what Electrocute actually does, which at the moment we don't currently know. Okay, so now we get to the piece of news that's going to affect existing PathOfExile 1 players as well as PathOfExile 2 players. This is something that's going to occasionally come up probably and cause a few little headaches, but for most people it's going to be something that happens entirely in the background. If you're someone that still has access to the email account that you set up your first PathOfExile account on, like I do, and you've never set up a second account, or maybe you've set up a second account but it's just to store your guild on or something like that, then in that case, these changes probably won't mean very much to you, but there'll be the odd occasional thing that might come up. But if you're the sort of person that has been both playing on console and on PC, or if you're the sort of person that's had a Steam account and a PathOfExile direct account, or especially if you're someone that has set up a PathOfExile account on an email address you no longer have access to, then this might be something that can be important, especially if that email account would have entirely expired and potentially been replaced. For example, if you have a very common first name and last name, and you went to a university that's fairly big, you set up a PathOfExile account there, then it's entirely possible that after you moved on from that university, someone else with the exact same first and last name may have been reallocated your email address, and there could be two conflicting PathOfExile accounts that use the same email address. Anyways, let's go through what Granny Games are doing to address some of these corner cases. This is going to result in a patch that's going to cause several hours of downtime to PathOfExile 1. Granny Games are hoping to have it all done in 4 hours, which will be the longest downtime the game has had in a while, but they're not even certain that they're going to get it done in 4. So the first thing they're doing is they're adding discriminators. Instead of your account being SirGog, it will now be SirGog #1, or maybe it'll be another number. Some people watching this video might be old enough to remember when Discord had a system like this. Now, the primary beneficiary of this change is going to be people who are setting up a new account, but just cannot find a username in PathOfExile 1 at the moment. Let's say that you've always been known as not a firefighter on all sorts of social media platforms, whether it be Reddit, whether it be the site formerly known as Twitter, whether it be your display name on YouTube, all these places, you know them by the same name. You then go into PathOfExile 1, trying to create an account, and find out that someone got that name back in 2013, and they haven't even logged into the game since 2015. They've moved on, they're not interested anymore, but they're still blocking up that name. Well, they're no longer going to block that name. They will have one discriminant, you'll have a different discriminant. Things will be easy to communicate, as long as you can remember what that discriminant is. Hopefully Grinding Games will allow players to choose their discriminant on a first come, first served basis, with people who have already had the name having first pick. But I don't know exactly how that's going to hold. The key thing is that brand new players are going to be able to get names that they want for their account, names that are easy for them to remember, and easy for them to communicate to other players. So that's the primary beneficiary of this change, but there'll also be a few corner cases where it'll be relevant for other players as well. The next thing is going to be sub-accounts. Now, I could be reading some of this information wrong. I think that this is something that Sony have forced Grinding Games to do because of their policies on MTX that are purchased on the PlayStation Store, not being able to be used on any other services, and MTX that are purchased on other services not being able to be used on PlayStation. I could be wrong, but that's my reading here. Essentially, this is going to be a net negative for players. It's going to make things more complicated. If you've had a console account and a PC account in the past, they're able to be partially merged, but the merge is going to work in a really messy way. And this complexity is going to work out like this. Firstly, characters are still going to be stuck to the specific account they were created on, but you can launch either of them from one instance of the game client. Then, you'll be able to choose between the two different character lists from an in-game menu. So far, so good. Now, the really complex thing is what happens to microtransactions here. Microtransactions that are purchased on one of these sub-accounts are still associated with that sub-account. If you previously had one account on Xbox Realm and also one account on the PC Realm, you can ask support to move all of the MTX from one account to the other as a one-time action. Characters, however, cannot be transferred in this way. Unfortunately, though, purchases that are made on PlayStation platforms cannot be used on other platforms, and purchases made on other platforms cannot be used on PlayStation platforms. So this is going to be the complexity here. And like I said, I'm pretty sure Grinding Games don't want it to be this way, but there's all of the sorts of licensing rules that they will have to live with. I expect this news will be only an inconvenience if you're someone who plays on a console that is not PlayStation, but will be quite disappointing if you are a PlayStation player and you also have a PC. This doesn't look like it's within Grinding Games' control, unfortunately. Now, merging other platform accounts. This is all about Steam, and I don't know if Grinding Games ever went with the Epic Store, but this is about Steam, fundamentally. PathOfExile accounts have always been able to support logging in from multiple PC-based platforms to the same account. We're now also allowing you to merge separate accounts that were created on different PC platforms. So one that's direct with Grinding Games, one that's with Steam, etc., etc. Now, it's been quite common, though, for players to have previously unintentionally create multiple accounts on different platforms. I'll note it's also the case that sometimes people intentionally create multiple accounts. I've certainly done this. I have one account that I play on, and I have a second account that stores ownership of my guild at various points. This is not really affected here. This is for unintentional creation of multiple accounts. If you've created multiple accounts for other reasons, they'll be fine. You can now merge these accounts together, but note that you can only merge one account created from each platform. So for instance, you can't merge multiple Steam accounts into a single one, but you can merge your Grinding Games Direct and Steam account together. And as we mentioned earlier, this is going to result in substantial downtime while Grinding Games do this, because if this patch goes badly, Grinding Games are going to have some massive reversion work to do. Ultimately, I'm intending not to log in for several hours after all of this is done, in order to let a bunch of the really weird corner cases get resolved. So now there's a bit of an FAQ that comes up. Firstly, will I be able to play my POE1 console characters on PC? No, you will not. PathOfExile 1 does not support crossplay at all. Will I be able to play my PathOfExile 2 console characters on PC when the game launches in early access? Yes, because PathOfExile 2 does support crossplay. Big difference between the two games here. After I link my Xbox and PC accounts, what happens to the microtransactions? They're still tied to one of the sub-accounts and the characters within it, but if you want to permanently remove them from one of those accounts and permanently put them on the other one, you've got the capacity to do that. That's going to require contacting support, and I expect support will be very busy. Obviously, Grinding Games will really thoroughly test this before it goes live. One of the things that they know, as well as anyone else, is that every mistake that gets through is going to cost them a lot of money. So spending the time to test it properly before it gets out into the world is going to be something that will benefit them. However, there's going to be a bunch of things that probably go wrong, or at least worst case scenario, a bunch of things will go wrong. For that reason, I strongly recommend that you just hold off on executing this merge for a little while. Wait and see if the world is on fire on the PathOfExile subreddit. Wait and see if the official Grinding Games forums are on fire. And if it turns out that there's a lot of problems, then don't go ahead. If it turns out that there's no problems, then go ahead and transfer your MTX via this process. What should I do if I link the wrong accounts together? Take great care when linking your accounts together. If anything goes awry, contact support. They will be able to fix it, but it's probably going to be a bit of a hassle for them and maybe a bit of a hassle for you. What happens if one of my secondary accounts gets banned or muted? That's going to apply across your entire account. So it's going to apply to all your accounts post-merge. What about if one of my accounts is permabanned in PathOfExile 1? Then that account's going to remain permabanned in PathOfExile 2. Can you upgrade from a supporter pack purchased on console to a higher tier pack on PC? This is one of those interesting corner cases I wouldn't have thought of here. The answer is no, you're not going to be able to do this. So if you're going to want to upgrade it, and if supporter packs on consoles do allow the upgrade path, which I'm actually not sure if they do or not, then you want to get that done before you merge the accounts together. After PathOfExile 2 is launched in early access, will I be able to use the existing PathOfExile 1 account to play it? So here the answer is a yes, but. Yes, if you've got access to PathOfExile 2, you will be able to launch it through your existing PathOfExile 1 account. However, to get access to PathOfExile 2, you will need to have an access key until PathOfExile 2 gets out of early access and becomes free to play. The details of this have not yet been made public. There's a lot of speculation based on what Grinding Games have done with earlier betas inside PathOfExile 1. What they've done in the past is they've sold supporter packs that include an access key, and they've also waived the requirement to have an access key to lifetime high spenders in PathOfExile 1. It would be reasonable to assume that that continues for PathOfExile 2 early access, but there has not yet been any firm commitments or firm promises on the exact form that that will take. As soon as those firm promises are made, then we'll be able to say exactly what's required to get into PathOfExile 2. So, yes, but is the answer to this question. I logged into my account and I don't see my characters. Why? In some cases, we had to merge two accounts together. Both accounts are still accessible. Use the sub-account selector at the top of the character selection screen to change which one you are logged into. So that's this little thing up here. That's going to be where you can change which of your two accounts you're able to log into. If you had both Matthew D #2304 and Matthew #7127, then that's how you'll be able to do that. Ultimately, this occurred due to various bugs in the past that allowed multiple accounts to be created using the same login credentials. Now, there'd be a number of ways this could happen. Maybe you've moved on from a university and you've got a quite common name, and then a future student has had your exact same name. So maybe you're John Smith and they're John Smith, and then you've both gone to the University of Melbourne. Entirely plausible that institution's big enough that you could have both John Smith who started in 2010 and John Smith who started in 2014. And then you've both been allocated the exact same email address, but the one who started in 2010 has just moved on entirely from the game, has no interest in coming back, but they do still have an account created. That's one sort of scenario this could happen. Another one would be if John Smith the first had set up a Steam account and set up a PathOfExile account and then walked away from that, and then John Smith the second had set up a Direct with Grinding Games account. The number of these sorts of corner cases that could theoretically happen, and then Grinding Games say on top of that there's been a number of historical bugs as well. If you're in one of these affected accounts, which is probably going to be pretty rare, then there's going to be some weird things that'll go on. Your account will have been merged with something new, and ultimately, you are going to be part of the reason that PathOfExile 2 got delayed by 3 weeks, because there's so many of these corner cases that come up, and it's so serious if you get them wrong that Graininger Games decided, well, we better take the time to do this right. The other thing that's come up very occasionally is where there have been accounts that have shared one login credential but not others. For example, they've shared a Steam login, but they have not shared the same email address. In this case, the Steam login is being removed from the account that has had both of its login methods connected, leaving separate accounts that are accessible with different login methods to each other. Now, if you actually did own both of these accounts, you'll be able to link these together. This is only affecting 579 players, but again, those 579 players are probably one of the main reasons that we've got the delay that we've had. Anyways, that's the extent of the FAQ. This is going to be a fairly important patch for Graininger Games to get right. And like I said, my personal advice is to just wait a few hours and see if the world's on fire before you log back into PathOfExile 1 after this patch goes live. I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and may you not run into an Azak Shaman when you're running around the marshlands on the outskirts of Exile.